Who are the Anunnaki? The Anunnaki are possibly the oldest documented pantheon of gods or set of deities in the world. They are born out of the ancient Mesopotamian culture, which obviously is at the heart of many so-called firsts for humans. The Anunnaki were gods who came to Earth to manipulate the planet, to seed the land. They created rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates, and they were here for very specific purposes. There were thousands of Mesopotamian gods over the cultures of the Sumerians, the Akkadians, and the Babylonians. But the ones that we know most prominently are An, Enki, Enlil, Iinanna, Marduk, Nergal. We know the names of Gilgamesh and Enkidu and Umbaba. And the Anunnaki were among the most formalized structures of any set of pantheon of gods. We see a very clear line of power and succession, and even the changing of power within the structure. At some point we see Enki take a backseat to Marduk, who had come to be known as the new ruler of this domain. Enki never goes away and still remains a major part of the greater organization and never loses any of his power or prestige. So we definitely see much more structure around the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki themselves were physical beings who came to Earth. This is what the mythologies of the Sumerians tell us very clearly. We know that the Anunnaki came here with the purpose of removing resources from the planet, which was primarily a colony planet for the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki also came with a group of lesser beings who were called the Igigi. Now, the Igigi would be the primary labor force for the Anunnaki, as we understand a very well-developed hierarchy among this advanced civilization. We know the story of the Anunnaki and the Igigi counterparts because it's very clearly documented in the rebellion that takes place. The Igigi had become tired of their constant toil, moving the soil and digging for gold, and they decided that they would rebel against Enlil. And Enlil made a concession with the lesser gods, understanding that they did bear a tremendous weight as the labor. And what they decided to do was create another being, a Lulu, that they called man, a being that was designed to do the labor that the gods no longer wanted to do. They took the DNA of the Anunnaki themselves, blending it with primates, created a hybrid man. He was smart enough to be given complex tasks to complete, but not powerful enough to ever rebel against the gods or ever present a threat to them. And at this time, this worked great, and they were very successful. But the gods decided at some point to give man the ability to reproduce. And man very quickly became too great in number and created noise and chaos. So much that it disturbed the gods, who on several occasions attempted to eradicate man from Earth. These are very well documented stories within Sumerian mythologies. And ultimately we have to understand that the Sumerian mythology tells a very complex relationship between mankind and the superior being who were his progenitors. Although it was tasked to man to toil and work, they were also aligned with gods in the sense that man helped the gods keep chaos at bay by spreading knowledge and developing literature and sciences. The Gilgamesh epic, which is possibly the oldest documented epic myth, gives us a greater insight into who the Anunnaki were, in the sense that they express very real human emotions. We see anger and annoyance, but we also see sympathy. And from this epic, I like to take three very important points. When we look at Gilgamesh specifically, his heritage was that of being 2/3 god and 1/3 human. His mother was the wild calf. His companion Enki was a very unique being who was created by the gods. Now, when we look at both those stories, we see a common idea of genetic manipulation. This is also coupled with the idea of how the Anunnaki created humans by merging their own DNA with some other being. The second point is that the Anunnaki ultimately express that they are concerned with the general happiness of mankind. When the citizens of Europe complain about the behavior of Gilgamesh, who was their king, the gods intervene. The gods created Enkidu to put Gilgamesh in his place, so that he would be more merciful to his kingdom and his people. The third point is that it shows throughout the story that the Anunnaki possess advanced technology, including the capability of terraforming a planet, extending human lives to immortality, and creating hybrid species. When we look at aspects of the genetic manipulation and advanced technology, particularly terraforming, it fits very neatly into the realm of alien conspiracies. Anunnaki myth headlines a significant mythologies about aliens in some way. It's a very interesting aspect and phenomenon of this culture that the Anunnaki myth has spread not only through religions and mythology, but also through alien conspiracies and science fictions. And that's what's so interesting about the Anunnaki mythology, because it approaches us on several levels. There is no way to study ancient Sumeria, one of our oldest cultures, without finding out more about the Anunnaki. Then it appeals to our alien believer culture. And I don't think there's another set of mythology that influences us in so many ways. In Anunnaki mythology, An creates the universe. And this places An at the head of the belief system, in the same way that he sits atop this organizational body. Enki is given lordship of this domain. He separates the heavens from the earth, which would be terraforming the atmosphere. He seeds the land, creates rivers, and thus the Fertile Crescent. The Igigi labor force ultimately rebels, and humans are created from the blood of Anunnaki and possibly primates. The humans would grow out of control in number and disturb the gods. The gods, in return, would unleash plagues and floods that would influence later belief systems. The Anunnaki would create many hybrid creatures, fueling myths of centaurs, minotaurs, and mermaids. The Anunnaki myth fits well with those who believe in tales of mining colonies on Mars. At some point, we know that the Anunnaki leave the Earth, possibly to return someday. What's important to understand about the Anunnaki mythology is that it reveals very early that our ancestors believed that creatures from other planets came to this planet, that they were able to manipulate the Earth and humans themselves. They created oases for their own pleasure and landing strips for their ships. And one day yet, these Anunnaki may return.